Okie dokie. So Mr. Pandaria Remix launched this week, as we've been kind of hyping up for the past couple of days. This Thursday, it was a worldwide launch. As of time of recording this, players have reached max level, players are doing some in-game content, and there's actually been a lot of stuff that's been happening and being posted to Wowhead pretty much daily about Remix. So I would go and kind of look at that. But kind of let's talk and take a look at what we've actually seen so far with Remix. First and foremost, there's a Twitch drop. If you watch 4 hours of Warcraft on Twitch for, I think it's through the month of May, you're able to earn the Eye of the Legion pet. The Eye of the Legion pet is a TCG, previously a TCG drop, where it was only basically attainable through, the auction house or TCG means. I think it's, players are going to have their opinions on it, but this is being brought back basically throughout the month of May. On top of that, Wowhead has created a bunch of good articles for players who are trying to engage in MOP Remix in some form or fashion, including this FAQ talking about things such as the auction house. The auction house, basically players aren't able to interact with it. No professions are going to be available. You can't leave Pandaria if you create a remix tune. Heirlooms, Time Runner characters don't have access to heirlooms. You can't send mail to Time Runner characters. Time Runner characters at the end of Remix will be converted to like normal characters for Dragonflight in the War Within. All gear will be replaced with appropriate item level equivalent. And then grouping Time Runners will permanently be phased from regular Dragonflight characters and cannot do activities together or even group together. However, Time Runners can join regular Dragonflight guilds. That way you can chat with guildies while playing both forms of the game, which I think is sick. Basically, how you create your character is you'll log into your native realm, and then you'll be able to create a Time Runner specific character on that native realm. And once you create that character, you're sent into this intro scenario. You get sent to Pandaria, and then you start your leveling process. In general, I would say that leveling through just questing is a lot faster than leveling through, dungeons. Although there have been players who've been leveling through both, and there's a bunch of different stuff that you can do. On top of that, and this is very cool, normal raid bosses will actually drop a permanent 12% experience bonus in MOP Remix, which means that, doing things such as Mogushan Vaults, Heart of Fear, Terrace of the Endless Springs, Throne of Thunder, and Siege of Orgrimmar on the normal difficulty are all very valuable. In addition to that, you also get this cloak, not the MOP cloak, that's something completely different, but you get this cloak that you get whenever you're doing time running, and whenever you basically, it's like an account-wide experience gain as well, where your Cloak of Infinite Potential will permanently increase your experience gained on your entire account by 12%. And so continuing to, do normal raids and do remix content is going to grant you bronze. It's going to grant you experience gain. You're going to be able to get bonus experience as well by doing the raids. There have been maybe some stuff that's kind of interesting with the raids itself. I've heard some scaling issues. I suspect those to probably be addressed rather quickly. Basically, Squishy wrote up in this post, normal Heart of Fear is much easier than Mogushan Vaults. There are a couple bosses that can cause you significant issues due to more difficult mechanics and scaling issues. Again, that's what I was kind of talking about. Grand Empress Shekzir has a lot of scaling issues. If there are any high-level ranged players in the group, greater than 50, they will likely not be able to participate in the encounters because Crive Terror and Deadly Screech is scaled off the level of the player. And so a level 70 player that gets Crive Terror will instantly one-shot themselves and the entire raid. So that'll probably be fixed, I would assume, maybe even at time of releasing this video. But going into the raids and getting the permanent experience is going to be a big deal. Continuing to get bronze. So bronze is the main currency, and what bronze allows you to do, first and foremost, you're able to upgrade your gear. You're also able to upgrade your cloak. But on top of that, you got the juicy cosmetic rewards that we kind of covered in the past couple of videos, where you're able to buy things such as the Tusks of Manaroth. You're able to buy a bunch of time running specific amounts. There's a bunch of mount recolors, and by utilizing bronze, you're able to purchase just a bunch of rare and unique items. Things like the Tusks of Manaroth, I've seen this question a bunch as well. It's going to be bind on account, and then once the character is converted to a normal War Within / Dragonflight character, that those Tusks of Manaroth can actually be war bound into your MOC. So you don't have to necessarily play a plate character if you want that appearance. On top of that, Wowhead has also created class leveling guides where they have a class overview. There will be BIS and best gems, and then leveling builds as well for all the specializations depending on what you want to play. I personally picked up a mage, and having the Frost Mage leveling builds kind of go through and tell me what talents I should put, or what points I should put in what talents when, has been pretty valuable. All in all, I think that this is something that's I've been enjoying. I think that it helps you as well. On top of that, so remix aside, we've had a lot of remix stuff. If you want more remix content, I would recommend going and looking at Wowhead. They're posting remix content all the time. Now let's talk about some of the other stuff that we've seen on the site the past couple of days. First and foremost, we had a large alpha build on Tuesday. They've been doing alpha builds on Thursday, but I think with the conflict of remix launching worldwide on Thursday, they were like, let's just ship this alpha build on Tuesday and try to get that in. Basically, shamans now have their final hero talent, where Totemic, I've heard a lot of good things about this. I haven't got a chance to catch up with Word Up or any of the other shaman writers to kind of get their opinions on it, but seeing community sentiment, it seems like Totemic is really cool rather than some of the other stuff. Then they also changed a lot of classes. DK is getting a decent amount of changes. We've even seen some hero talent updates, such as things like Keeper of the Grove and Wildstalker Druid. Sun Fury Mage also getting a little bit of an update. I think and Void Weaver Priest, I think, is also another one that was talked about as a large update. Probably the biggest update on this build, though, is to Demonology Warlock. And I was able to catch up with Kalamazai and have a decently long discussion about this, about Demonology Warlock and the changes to Demonology. And you guys can take a listen into that right now. Coming to you live from the great state of Florida, I'm here, joined by Kalamazai. Welcome, Kalamazai. And we've seen a lot of changes to some other specializations, but Warlock seems like they're getting the largest amount of changes every single week. Right?
Well, we've needed it. I mean, we've been in a rough spot for a whole expansion now. So what do you expect? I mean, we're not meta at anything. We're terrible at what we do. I mean, come on,
dude, I just re-rolled Warlock. What do you mean not meta at anything?
We're all right, but we have gotten a lot of changes. Yeah, every spec has gotten some changes here and there. Demon F got the biggest changes a few weeks ago, but it wasn't the best overhaul for a handful of reasons. Some things were good, some weren't spectacular. One of the main issues was just pathing in the tree was really awkward. A lot of 2-point talent nodes, a lot of talents in general. And flavor wise, things were a little off too. But that changed this week. So
yeah, I saw your tweet about 2-point talent nodes. I'll try to pull that up here in a couple of seconds. But one of the big things is with Demonology Warlock, that one got a very substantial overhaul, and it seemed like community sentiment was more or less positive. Why do you think the community sentiment was so positive with the Demonology changes?
I mean, we literally have a capstone that is a boss from Antorus. We've got Fahargan Shadlarg, whatever his name is.
Dude, look at this. You're actually summoning dogs. What is this?
You know what the cool thing is? Melee has to see them. Melee sees those dogs, by the way. They're there.
What?
They exist.
Are they that big? How big are they?
They're that big. They're pretty big. Yeah, they're about that size. Yeah, they're good. This week's overhaul brought one of our capstones. It turns your Biofiend into one of these two dogs. The purple one is single target based, and the red one is AoE based. So you don't have them both at the same time. Yeah,
okay.
It's one or the other. It's a shared choice node.
It's a choice node, though. Oh, okay. Is it going to be cool for in Plus? You think? Do you think it'll be a really interesting decision?
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
I mean, the purple one's bugged right now, doing quadrillion damage. But yeah, it's the red one pulses fire. The purple one just chomps purple jaws on things. There's a lot of talents around it that amplify its damage even more.
So Demo got a couple of changes. Maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. Mm-hmm. Why do you think? Did you actually think at the time that Demo needed more updating? Because this is a really extensive update. This is almost class level rework level of updates, especially with the class tree changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is the actual overhaul. The one that happened a few weeks ago was setting the stage or something for this, basically.
Okay.
The big thing was after that change, the overhaul a few weeks ago, Demonology had 50 talent points total in the tree, and you had I believe it was 8 2-point talent nodes, and pathing was really hard to do. And yeah, you have the list here actually.
Yeah, I found it.
A lot of the classes have been overhauled, Mage, Ret Paladin, I believe Rogue, I believe another class too, maybe somebody else. I'm not sure who.
Windwalker got a lot of theirs. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at those classes, most of them have had their 2-point nodes greatly reduced. You have Hunter, Warrior, I think hasn't been hit yet either, but Hunter and DK haven't been either, and they're at the 8, 10, 11, 13 2-point node part of that overhaul still, right?
Okay,
I
have a question. Do you think that this is too far? I was kind of having this conversation with somebody, or maybe I was having it on stream. This is so whenever Blizzard went and designed the talent trees, they designed them to have some friction where you were actually making decisions in the tree. And now with the removal of the 2-point nodes, a lot of the reworks are like, oh yeah, let's remove all the 2-point nodes so you have no friction and now your spec is OP. Like, do you think, like, is this okay? Like, is this really what we should be doing?
I mean, I've often wondered talent trees. I think they're really cool. I like them. I wonder what the sentiment is at Blizzard at times, talent trees. Like if they think they're still awesome and insane, or they're like, maybe we should have done this differently. Because yeah, some classes have there's a huge amount of disparity between Hunter with 13 and
As an
Walker with 0.
Yeah, like
right?
if you're an advocate of your own spec, literally you just want it to be reworked, and you want it to be reworked to remove all of the 2-point nodes because then you get everything.
Yeah, right. I mean, for example, this demo rework, we went from 50. Good God, edit that out, titles. We're good. My stomach hurts, chat. I said before the start that my stomach hurts. It doesn't. Edit it out. He's gonna leave it in. Anyways, so Demo went from 50 total talent points to 43 in this build total in the tree, and we have 0 2-point nodes in the tree now. They're all 1-point nodes. Every single one is 1 point. So it's us and Windwalker that have no 2-point talent nodes in our spec tree.
Does it feel better to path now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it feels a lot better, right? Because I mean, they've moved Tyrant to the middle of the tree, so your main cooldown's in the middle, not the bottom. Yeah. And just like pathing in general, you can get most of your AoE nodes, most of your single target nodes. Some things are awkward. A couple nodes here and there probably shouldn't just be there, ready to move. But yeah, it always feels bad when you get to your end tier capstone talents. And you have like 10 points available. You got to spend 4 more in the top part of the tree because you haven't got everything you want yet, right? So like getting that bottom part, having 10 open, where like the fun part of your tree is, and having the ability to spend them all feels great. So yeah, it feels great pathing wise. It's a really good overhaul, flavor wise and pathing wise.
So mobility, I think that was something that I saw some community sentiment talking about, specifically demonic cores. Demonic cores are basically like free Doom Bolt procs. Get me if I'm wrong. It like basically whenever your dogs expire, or Demon Bolt, whenever any of your pets expire, you have a chance to get demonic core procs, and it allows you to basically cast while moving. Demonology, surprisingly enough, had a lot of mobility. They're drastically reducing the amount of demonic core procs you're getting.
Yeah, we had too much like in 10.0. You never even cast Shadow Bolt. People meme about Shadow Bolt all the time, but like they've drawn back on demonic cores more and more every patch. The change that made the Dreadstalkers 2 builds ago actually was Dreadstalkers, whenever they expired, which is a 20-second cooldown, but always give you 2 demonic cores.
Yes.
100% chance. Now it's 35. So when it comes to like hitting demonic cores, there's other ways you can do that still if you really want to, but like you're hitting consistency there and you're making it RNG, which is what you don't want, right? You don't want that RNG. That affects implosion setups and AoE. It affects tyrant setups. You want to have at least some amount of guaranteed cores outside of your other cooldown being power siphon. Sometimes I cast dogs, I get 2 cores back, and we're flying. And sometimes I get 0 back, and it's like feast or famine, and you never know what's going to happen. So like, I mean, I think personally it needs to be reverted just for less RNG in the tree, which is what they wanted less of, they said early on.
Okay.
And just there's other ways to nerf it. I would even if dogs like had a guaranteed chance to give 1 demonic core and not 2. Like if the option is 100% chance for 1 demonic core or 35% for maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 0, I take the 1 and 100%. Consistency is really important with rotations, and not having that does make things awkward. So I think it's a big thing to look at again for sure.
So you think it's the rotational thing? You don't think it's necessarily the mobility? Because I saw a lot of people kind of talking about it as like, we actually have to hardcast more.
I mean, like, until you play alpha, it does feel harder to move. You do have less demonic cores, yes, for sure, but there's still a handful of them. If it's pre-planned movement, you can sort of play around that. But if it's like, I got a mechanic, I got to move. Yeah, there's been times I just walk with no spells to cast, and it does feel bad.
That's a caster, that's a caster thing.
Well, I mean, then you have Mage or Icy Flows, and you have Shaman with Spirit Walker's Grace, and you have Hover, which is Old Jaden's Cunning. So I don't know, man. I'm not really sure.
I haven't played Destro, and I feel like I'm planted to the ground personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I guess I want to cover. So for players who maybe want to be playing Demonology coming in the next expansion, they reined in Tyrant burns to be less impactful. Halfway through Dragonflight, right? Where they cap the amount of demons you're able to contribute to your Tyrant. Is that still a thing?
He's back. He's back, baby.
He's back. It's a big Tyrant?
Yeah. They put him in the middle of the tree, and the talent below him is Reign of Tyranny, which increases his damage. And they changed the talent in the actual hero talent tree for Diabolist It's in the changes there if you'll have it at the
I
very
saw
top.
this. Yeah, right
So
here.
tyrant damage increased by 70%, which is pretty crazy. Because when you're playing with Ring of Tyranny, that stacks and it adds up in a sense, right? So tyrant's back to doing like 14% roughly in our single target, which is like number one, number two in our breakdown. It's not like 30% crushing the world, but it's not 1% anymore.
Okay.
It feels like a cooldown now, and it's a 1 minute cooldown also. So it's every minute you have that strong single target profile. That's only for Diabolist hero talents though. For Soul Harvester, it's sort of wet noodle still. But you win some, you lose some.
Would you
So,
recommend the spec to people who are looking to maybe play Warlock next expansion?
yeah. Our hero talents are insane for every single one. And this version of
Diabolus
Demonology, yeah.
Diabolus looks so cool.
Yeah. Dude, there's demons every 10 seconds. Like the new Doom in the tree actually isn't that bad. They sort of got it right finally for Demonology. That Doom guard you see there is guaranteed every 10 seconds or whatever in AoE. Like in Mythic Plus, he's out every 10 seconds.
So where did this lady come from?
Great question, Tattles. I don't know. I need to find out. Yeah, it's really fun. Thematically, this is a great, like legitimately great overhaul. A couple things to change here and there talent wise, but they did a really good job. So I highly would recommend it. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kalamazai, for joining. Thank you for giving your insight on Warlock as always. People go check him out on his stream. He streams fairly regularly. Go check out his YouTube page for anything keeping up to date with Warlock as well. He always comes at you with great introductions like, hello, everybody. Kalamazai here. And that's going to be it for us today. Goodbye. Always great to be able to catch up with Kalamazai himself, the Florida man. Never ceases to provide content, especially that round of Warlock. Other news that we've had this week. Private Auras are returning the War Within and now will end up affecting Mythic Plus. Private Auras are Blizzard's way to stop players from having assignment-style Weakauras. They've been met with a lot of negative community sentiment, generally speaking, because of how unfun they make some mechanics sometimes. More often than not, they don't affect the mechanics at all, but the times that they do affect the mechanics, it's almost always been negative. Things like Volcanic Heartbeat on Echo and Neltharion is definitely the one that comes to my mind almost immediately. And it seems like they're returning in the War Within, where, and they're also going to be affecting Mythic Plus. For Mythic Plus, I think it's pretty unlikely that they're actually going to impact everything. Now, this is just my opinion as it currently stands. It's not necessarily related to like the news itself. I don't think that they're likely to impact anything. But for community sentiment for the raid ones and the Private Auras returning, it's been largely negative. I think that everybody kind of hopes that they don't negatively impact boss mechanics again, where players, and I think that a large portion of the negative community sentiment comes from the fact that players still had to weak aura out a lot of these mechanics that were private aura'd, but then they would have to use like really bad workarounds. And whenever I say really bad workarounds, basically they're using macros and invisible chat rooms and stuff like that to be able to, work around basically having the ability on you. So you'd be targeted by a bomb on Smolderon, you would press a macro, and then it would assign players as to who is targeted by the bombs on Smolderon, and then what order they should break them in. And of course, that's really dumb. And that's not in the spirit of what the private auras are supposed to be, but that's basically how players believe that they needed to do the mechanic. And so Blizzard continues to design mechanics that players believe need to be weak aura'd, and they will find a workaround. And so the arms race as to what's going to happen next is still kind of interesting to see. But private auras are definitely returning in Raid and Mythic Plus. For Mythic Plus, they're unlikely to design mechanics that actually need to be assigned out because the assignment style weak auras just aren't really a thing for 5-man content. And frankly, if there was a mechanic that like you were going to use an assignment style weak aura for, and like you needed an assignment style weak aura for, the mechanic was probably too hard for a Mythic Plus anyways. So that makes you kind of question as to what it's for. Positive news, Blizzard increasing the talent loadout cap in the upcoming War Within Alpha build. Talent loadout cap, I think, was something that was talked about to death at the very beginning of Dragonflight, where you were only able to have 10 loadouts. Being able to increase loadout cap and stuff like that, that's awesome. I think that was something that I've been using a Weakaura, basically all of Dragonflight, talent loadout EX, if you're looking for one, and that will allow me to have more potential loadouts for my specs. But even still, like I just wish I had more than 10 loadouts, particularly if you're playing multiple specializations. It gets a bit hairy, where you're like, well, I can only have 3 per druid spec, and I maybe wanted a bit more. Okay, another positive news. We've actually seen all of the tier set models data mined, and I've kind of gone over these, various points more often than not there on the live stream, but we can kind of take a look at some of these. DK1, not in love with. Demon Hunter 1, I think looks okay. I'm not in love. So it went kind of thematic with the shoulder and helm thing. They did this for a couple of specs where the shoulder pieces have like these spikes on them, but the helmets will also have the similar spikes on them. And that happened with, I think, Monk, Warrior, and DH. I'm not in love with it generally, but I do think that this Demon Hunter 1 looks okay. For Druid, it looks very feral and Guardian-esque, where you have these large shoulders with like a wolf on them. You also have like the bear emblem in the middle of the back piece and stuff like that. I think the hat's a bit goofy. You just get to proc like a barbershop customization or something on your helmet. Not in love with the hat, but I think that the rest of it's really cool. The Evoker one, I think we showed this off in the last video. Probably the coolest Mog set I've seen maybe ever. The fact that they have to use visage form and look like an ugly lizard is a major downside to this, but this has got to be one of the coolest transmog sets I think I've ever seen, except for this yellow one. I'm not in love with this yellow one, but the rest of the colorings of this Evoker set are so badass. Hunter fairly regularly has really bad mogs. I think that this one isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm not in love with like the helmet, I think, in general, but I feel like this Hunter one's just so average. I don't think it's like that bad, but I don't think it's like good. Mage, I think, yeah, it looks like a mage mog. This purple one in particular, you look like an arcane mage whenever you wear this. I think the mage one looks okay. Like, I think mage never really disappoints with their mogs, and they can always go with a pretty good theme for a lot of their mogs, and I think that this set is no exception. Monk, I think Monk is an absolute joke. I think the ox shoulders matched with like the helmet makes it look so goofy. This coloring I don't mind. This like light blue gray coloring I actually think is nice, but just the helmet and the shoulders I think is hideous. Paladin, I think Paladin's good. I think this coloring in particular looks really, really good on the Paladin one, and that comes from PvP, which is a bit unfortunate, but I think the Paladin set looks solid. The Priest one looks Shadow-esque, is the best way that I could describe it, where, these are going to look really good, I think, if you're playing a Shadow Priest in particular. I think there's a lot of people that can use these really well. Rogue, I feel like is kind of similar to Priest, where Blizzard very rarely misses with like Rogue Mogs. This looks like you're playing a Rogue. So I think this is like an average Rogue Mog. Like, even though it's like cool, I think this is cool. Like, I like the accent thing. I like the, the wispy fire coming off the character and stuff like that. Fine. Shaman. People equated this to like the Sims gym that's over people's heads in the Sims game whenever they want you to interact with them. I can't really unsee that anymore. I think the Shaman's fine. For Warlock, I think it's an unpopular opinion of mine that I just don't love this one. You look like a Savara, but like I think that there's something wrong with the helmet, where you have like this like mask front of the helmet that I'm just like not in love with it. Maybe it'll look better whenever it's not like on a male human, like because all these models that we're using on Wowhead are male humans, so I'm not like in love with it. But I just didn't. I don't know. I think that it's maybe just my opinion that I'm not in love with that. And then we got the Warrior one, which I think is, again, they went with this theme where it's like the horns and the shoulders, and I think it's just hideous. I think this is so ugly. Yeah. Those are all the mogs that we've seen for the first tier. And then the last thing that we got is Omni tokens are actually returning. I think Omni tokens are sick. As somebody who took a step back from raiding and is now largely doing Mythic Plus, I think that being able to have Omni tokens and the Catalyst and further access to tier and the Great Vault and stuff like that, Omni tokens I think are absolutely spectacular, just in general. So I'm interested in seeing if the AOTC token also makes a return. Hasn't really been anything data mined on that, but the Omni tokens returning, dropping off final bosses. Typically they drop like 3 of them off of a final boss of a raid. It helps, just game wide, people and players get tier faster, and that's obviously the most important for like first tiers of the expansion. Whenever you're going from no tier to a 4 set, like that is a massive spike. We saw it in the first season of Dragonflight, where players were going from no tier to 4 set, and they were having this just absolutely colossal spike where some specs were just pretty bad until they got tier. And so Omni tokens and AOTC tokens and the catalyst and increased catalyst pacing have always have been there lately to be able to help with that. Yeah, that's all the news that we've had this week. You know, it's a pretty long news cycle, especially with all the stuff happening with MOP Remix. But Blizzard is continuing to churn out a lot of content. Hopefully we get an announcement for a date for War Within soon. That would actually be kind of sick. I don't know necessarily when it's going to happen, but maybe we'll see what's coming up in the future. I hope to see you guys in next week's video, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.